Hello, everyone. My name is Mr. Jewett. I'm going to be talking to you today about DP English Literature. This is an 11th grade course that continues on in year 2 to 12th grade. I'll be talking to you mostly about the 11th grade year, but a lot of this will apply to next year as well. First, a little bit about me. Um, I've been here at Notre Dame for 3 years. This is my fourth. You can see a little bit about me here. I have 16 plus years of teaching experience. I've taught in Korea, in Albania, in New York, and now here in Georgia. My responsibilities here at Notre Dame are in the IB coordinator. I am also obviously an English literature teacher, and I also work on extended essay. And some of your children are already starting to learn about that. And you'll hear more about that as we progress through the semester. My background is in English education and English literature. I also have quite a great deal of IB training experience in coordination, literature, extended essay, even MYP. So if you have any IB questions, I can always answer those. In general, my philosophy really focuses on student-centered learning, especially at upper levels of high school. Students really have a lot of the foundational knowledge that needs to be certainly reinforced and polished, but I really look to put that to work. I'm looking to empower students to develop responsibility because that's really what is going to serve them as they move on to the next phases in their lives. Also, I have a connection here to NDA. My son is in fourth grade. He's been here for 3 years as well. And so we're all part of the NDA family. A little bit about this course. As I mentioned, this is the first year of a 2-year higher level course. Higher level essentially means there's more contact time. So as you move through the course and your son or daughter moves through the course, there'll be some additional meeting times, sometimes during Irish time, sometimes during mass times. It could be a full diploma component. It could also be part of course certificates. And as we move into the registration period next year, students will be classified as such. A big part of the course is student choice. They have a learner portfolio, and that learner portfolio is a record of their interaction with texts and concepts from the course. And I'll get a little bit more into that a little later in the presentation. A sort of central progression that I will refer to with the students and they'll become very familiar with is the ladder model. This is where when we interact with the text, we need to be able to summarize it. It's essentially talking what it's about. Then we move into analyzing it. And the analysis is understanding the author choices, why authors made those choices and the effect of those choices. And then we tie that all together into an interpretation. And this is where students can get creative to a degree. They can think about maybe an unconventional interpretation. The key is that it always has to be found in the text. So students will always go back to the text and be able to prove via textual analysis and references to the text that their interpretation of what the kind of deeper meaning is legitimate and is in fact invited by the text. And then we always want to think about, well, why this matters, right? My interpretation of this text is X, and here's why that is relevant to the reader, to listeners, to the audience, why it matters for us today. You see some of the areas of exploration and course concepts here. More details can be found in the guide that you can find on ManageBack, but essentially the course looks at 3 kind of broad areas of exploration. The first one is the more conventional literary approach to things, how we interpret literature through analysis. That's readers, writers, and texts. Then we have geographical space and historical time. This is when we think about the context in which a work was created, and then also how we may read it outside of that context. So if we're reading Shakespeare, we want to be aware of what was going on during the time of Shakespeare, but we also want to allow the work a little room to sort of breathe and to think about it in relation to modern values, concepts, and ideas. And then finally, intertextuality. This is how a work may reference another work. A work may be a retelling of a previous work, or deal with general ideas, concepts, traditions. We're working with this first. So for example, we've just finished The Things They Carried as summer reading, and we're going to be getting into Hemingway's short stories. And we're going to think about how the tradition of short fiction, of sort of a soldier's experiences, is at play in both O'Brien and Hemingway. And while they may not directly interact with one another via an allusion from O'Brien, the fact that we have 2 young Midwestern boys who go off to war or have experiences with war, and how that sort of transforms them, reaffirms values, changes them. We're going to think about sort of how those texts sort of harken back to one another. And you can see how some of the course concepts come up there too. Obviously, identity, I referred to there, who we are in terms of the author, the characters, but also the reader. Us reading Hemingway, us reading O'Brien can help us understand a little bit about sort of constructs of masculinity, archetypes of, the soldier, how these are represented in literature and popular culture. And we'll look at also, connecting back to intertextuality, how we see these in film, in music, in art. So really, this is allowing students to make these conceptual connections and to not think about each work in a vacuum. And those connections, I think, are quite fruitful in developing higher level thinking skills. The group aims here, this talks about really what we're seeking to do on a broad level through the course. I'm not going to go through each one of these, but if you look in the syllabus, you can find these in detail. Really, it's a lot of those things I discussed: appreciating literature, higher level thinking, analyzing literature, understanding conventions in literature, etc. The assessment objectives as well, the broad objectives are to know, understand, and interpret. So really be able to summarize a text, but then kind of dig deeper into that text and how it's put together and the choices made, which brings us to analyzing, right? Understanding how it's constructed, and then really evaluating how effectively it's constructed. We're not going to tell students if a work is, a good work or a bad work, but hopefully training them to sort of evaluate, why this might be discussed as, an excellent work or a successful work in comparison to others. And then finally, communicating, just being good writers, being good presenters, being confident in their ability to express their ideas. When it comes to how they're assessed, they have their IB marks and they have their Notre Dame Academy grade. The IB marks aren't going to come into play until after that second year, where the students will get a mark on a 1 to 7 scale from the IB, similar to getting an advanced placement mark on a scale of 1 to 5. What they should really be concerned about right now is their Notre Dame Academy marks. There is some sort of crossover between the IB marks and the Notre Dame Academy marks. But if they're doing well on their Notre Dame Academy marks, they are preparing themselves for success on those exams. The Notre Dame Academy marks are composed of their summatives, which is 80%, and their formatives, which is 20%. The summatives typically are going to use IB rubrics, IB assessments, or mock IB assessments as the focus. Formatives will be a bit more structured. There may be IB components in there in terms of mocks, but this is more just sort of giving students an opportunity to take risks, to get feedback. The different types of IB assessments, there's many kinds. They'll do commentaries, they'll do presentations, they'll do writing, and primarily writing. And this year, the big focus is going to be on a higher level essay. This will be completed at the end of the course. It is externally marked, and basically what that means is the IB will grade it, but they will compose this as part of their coursework. I will also give them a grade, but that grade will not necessarily correspond to the mark they're given by the IB. And this is a 1,200 to 1,500 word essay. As I said, they'll compose this at the end of the year based upon their own interactions with text, and they'll decide which text they want to write about and how they're going to approach it and analyze it. The learner portfolio will really guide them in doing that. This is their record of their interaction with text, all the assignments they do, their notes will go in here. It's a Google Drive folder. This is something that they have to do. It's required from an IB perspective. And the reason for that is it's going to ensure academic honesty, a record of all the work they've done as they move through the course, but it's also a great way for them to make connections over time. So a text maybe they read now, they want to go back to that next year because this is a 2-year course, and they'll have a record of that and a way to sort of make those connections. This semester, they've already read the things they carried. We're going to do quite a few books this semester. We'll be moving into Hemingway and then some poetry. The other 2 texts, the Thomas Foster books, which are How to Read Poetry Like a Professor and How to Read Literature Like a Professor. These are more lenses for them to analyze literature. So we read those, but the students will really present on some of the key ideas from there and then seek to apply them to the poetry and the novels that we're reading. So there's a lot here. Second semester, not as much. This is when we move into an exploration of time and space, the context in which different fiction is written. So we'll be analyzing fiction, but also looking at the different nations and historical periods in which they were written, and in some cases, looking at the author's biography as well. So that's 3 texts here for that second semester. Also, please do review that syllabus if you haven't already. I believe I received the syllabus acknowledgement form for everyone, but that's always a good reference. And if you have any questions, do not hesitate to ask. Thanks so much. If any questions come up, I look forward to talking to everyone on Zoom on the 17th from 7 to 8 p.m. And you'll be receiving a link from me for that. Thanks.